Welcome to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm Rebecca, your host, and together we'll explore the spirit of beauty, how beauty invites new possibilities, enlivens us to inhabit our innate creativity, and connects us more deeply with ourselves and with each other. We'll have conversations and share reflections that invite you into a frequency of gentleness, truth, and mystery. I'm so glad you're here. If you find the Liberating Beauty Podcast meaningful, please consider supporting our work. To donate, follow the link in the show notes to the Together in Beauty website, home to this podcast, along with other offerings to accompany you on your journey of spiritual becoming. Please subscribe, rate, and share this podcast wherever you listen. And as always, thank you for your support and for being here with us. Hello and welcome back to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. I'm really delighted to have you join us today as we explore one of my absolute favorite topics, which is the nature of time. I've been fascinated by how time is taught to us as something that is almost linear and constant, when in practice, I think to myself how a moment can feel like a day, and at times a day can feel like a moment. But even more mysterious to me is this idea that our pain and also healing can happen backwards and forwards in time. So there's something about this, almost the loosening of our relationship to time, which to me is something that I find profoundly beautiful, mysterious, and I think it's something I'll think about for my entire life. But when I learned about our guest's writing on the subject of time, I knew I wanted to invite her to this conversation. Rebecca S. Krantz, who goes by Becca, is a sociologist, an artist, a facilitator, a philanthropist, a spiritual practitioner, and a cancer survivor. And she lives in a co-housing community with her husband and 2 adult stepchildren with disabilities. And I met Becca, I was just thinking, like upwards of 20 years ago when we were part of a meditation community together. Over the years, I've had the real pleasure of getting to connect with you as you inhabit multiple roles, and most recently as an author. So Becca, I'm really delighted to have you here to talk about your novel in progress called Rooting for Time, and to explore the nature of time together. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Rebecca. I'm excited.
Me too.
All of your things you said in the intro, I have like 17 different thoughts already.
You're already there.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, maybe we'll do this. I've had the pleasure of getting to know you. I'd love to start by having our listeners just hear a little bit more about who you are as a human being and what's currently bringing you energy and aliveness or curiosity. Maybe some of the things you've already noted down will factor in. I'd love to hear more about you.
Well, one of the thoughts I had when you were talking about linearity of time and non-linearity of time is how regimented my habits are and how very on time I have learned to be in my life. And as a facilitator, one of my biggest claims to fame early on was she can keep a meeting on time. And I would, in an agenda, I would map out to the minute each section of how long I expected it to take. And I was never accurate in my predictions, but it was part of my planning process. And sometimes I would stick to it. And over the years, this is now at least 30 years since I, started doing facilitation, I came to realize that's not always serving the group. And my life is also still like that a lot. Here's when I'm exercising. Here's when I was in my calendar. My husband has to, make dates with me in my calendar. But I have gotten better, I think, at letting go of those plans and being responsive to what's happening in the moment. I still don't feel at ease with that a lot of the time. And the writing of the book is partly my process of trying to sort all that out. Like, what what of my natural timeliness is my natural timeliness because I'm really tuned in to the needs of others, and time is partly how clock time is how we coordinate with each other in this culture, and what is actually that I'm just really uptight. And when is it both? You know, like I'm overly worried about the needs of others or trying to fit everything in and trying to be perfect. And so that's partly where the writing of the book has just let me dive deep down all these rabbit holes about the science of time and the sociology of time and my own experience of it.
Yeah, I'm curious about that. It's in trying to tease apart what you're already learning through writing the book itself. What would you say is kind of what you're noticing about the relationship between something that's just your natural gift of attunement versus or also the conditioning and the value that's placed on time and timeliness?
I think it's both, really. I mean, I think that, you know, we are naturally social beings, and so I think it's not bad to be really attuned to the needs of other people. It's great. And oftentimes that's at the expense of being attuned to myself. And whether it's somebody's waiting for me right now or my father who's no longer with us on this earth expected this of me and I want to live up to that expectation, you know, it's still externally. And so, I think one of the concepts that I encountered in my research was how in ancient Greece, I guess it was, they had different gods. They had all these different gods that had different jurisdictions or whatever, and they had more than one god of time. And Kronos is the god of the linear time, the way we view time now, more or less. I mean, I'm sure it's not exactly because that was a different culture, and then there's this other god called Kairos that's the god of serendipity and flow and yes, a sort of what we would call more magical approach to time, and so I feel like it's partly like trying to befriend that aspect of time that I'm on this quest for.
Or I'm already getting ahead of myself because I'm thinking back to this part of a conversation that you hosted a few months ago, and you were talking about befriending time, and I was curious of where that was coming from. So what I hear you saying now is befriending that particular aspect of time, Kairos, that one that is in service of, that delights in the emergent. Am I understanding what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like I really understand what they thought this being entity was, but another way of thinking about it is how to trust the unfolding in the moment, rather than constantly being anxious about time. And I have found a way that I can shift when I notice that I'm being anxious, that I'm leaning forward into the next moment, to kind of relax back a little bit and trust that even though this is happening, quote unquote, later than I thought it should, it might be perfect. And I really would like to keep learning that lesson more deeply and being able to embody it more of the time.
You said that there's a way that now you're able to recognize kind of when you're kind of in that mode of, I don't know if you use the word urgency, but feeling like, oh, I wish it was happening already. What has been that practice or that knowingness has helped you to kind of stop, at least momentarily?
Well, I mean, I do a lot of different practices. I have a mindfulness meditation practice, and I have a journaling practice, and I have a kind of mindful movement that it's like physical therapy or whatever I'm working on physically. And so there's an attunement to the physical sensations that helps, tension and in my novel, it's speculative fiction, so my protagonist is even more time-bound than I am. Like, she knows what time it is to the minute all the time, except her whole life she has. Like, even when she wakes up in the middle of the night, she knows what time it is to the minute, which is sometimes true of me, and less so as I age. But she also is aging and going through menopause, and in that time sense is slipping. But it's not a relaxing, it's a, wait, time's getting ahead of me kind of thing. And there's also a kind of rising fascist regime but I call it chronofascism because it's specifically trying to manipulate people's time and the from things that are real in our society, like workplace time clocking and computers tracking how much of your time are your eyes on the screen. I mean, this stuff actually happens in workplaces, and to more speculative fiction kinds of things where this feeling that I described as leaning forward into the next moment rather than relaxing back into the embrace of our ancestors and the moment as it's emerging, that process of collectively all of us doing that is actually dragging time faster because we're all leaning forward too much. And
I was repeating back to myself, it's dragging time faster, so we're just being pulled by that pulse of urgency when we're always leaning forward into the next thing. Yeah. Huh. So one of the things that I'm curious about is something about this time that we're in right now. It has a lot of us questioning our relationship with lots of different things, to natural resources, to how we relate to each other. And I found it really striking and really, it moved me that the thing that you were connecting to was time. Of course, that could be a through line for many of these other things that we're really kind of grappling with globally. But what was it uniquely about time that called to you?
I don't even know if I can remember. I mean, there's a version of a scene in my novel that I wrote that probably isn't going to end up in the final draft, but where one day the protagonist just says to her husband, what if time were speeding up? Yeah. Like, how would we even know if it was speeding up for everybody? And in the novel, he says to her, well, you might know because of your perfect sense of time. But as a sociologist, I'm fascinated by how our world, our experiences are constructed by our shared sense of meaning and our everyday practices, and yet it feels like our world is so constructed by our social norms and practices that it's almost like a physical force. So I think it was that combination of like my own experience and then this sociological curiosity, like what are we doing to ourselves and each other?
Yeah. Thinking of my own experience, sometimes almost stepping out of the matrix, it can feel good. It can also feel physically painful in a way that I've had even a hard time figuring out why. Like the pain of a risk that you can't attribute to a specific thing when you start stepping out of time, start questioning why I'm moving around with this urgency of it needs to happen yesterday. But I do think that I was even like, why do I also feel this be beautiful? Like that grappling with the possibility of being able to move out of what's become almost like water or like air. You can't even see it, and then something happens, And then it opens this possibility to reckon with, how am I participating? How am I colluding with something like time that keeps me just stuck? You know what I mean? Like, so you also said something I really love, though. Another way of framing that could be, how do I learn my way into a relationship with time, where that feels more gentle to me, and then I feel that time is also befriending me. So it's not like, oh, you've either stepped out or you're in or it hurts or that. How do you navigate that relationship with time?
I don't know. I want to look back at this poem that I wrote yesterday that's like, probably needs editing, but this is how it came out yesterday. Where I was writing in my journal about my way too busy feeling, and I was saying, is this just a feeling, or is it true? Am I way too busy, or am I just like feeling that way? And noticing that I actually had some spaciousness in my day, what we call spaciousness, but in my novel I call timefulness. And I said, maybe I could live it timefully. And then I wrote, each drop of time lands as it will, ripples in this pool of life that connects eventually to the ocean. And then I was thinking, I want to practice being in each drop, or being each drop, and remember that, like almost like a mantra. So this drop, and then this drop, and there's a dropping in.
That really resonates with me, of staying with with each drop. I think it was 2 days ago, I was messaging with a colleague and saying, sometimes you think you want all the drops, and then you get flooded. Just completely flooded. It's like, and then a dam bursts, because you're not meant to necessarily have even access to all the drops that you think you want at the same time.
Totally. It reminds me when I was 14, I had a family friend. We had these family friends, and there was a 16-year-old girl who was hanging out with me, and my boyfriend at the time. She was sort of our chaperone, because my boyfriend's mom didn't want us to be alone. And she said to us, we do have all the time in the world, just not all at once.
Yeah. So there's a quote somewhere. It's been attributed to like 18 different people. Some of the people is Mark Twain, Albert Einstein, Ray Cummings, about the only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen all at once.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that there is beauty and there is wisdom in not having everything all at once.
Yeah.
Yeah. In part because of the learning. If it's already here, it kind of robs us of some of that ability to learn our way into time. So Becca, what does it feel like to you when you are in that experience of timeless time, when you're learning your way into time? What does that feel like? What are you doing when you have that experience?
Well, one of the reasons that I decided I wanted to become a writer kind of later in life is that I realized that writing is the only thing I do when I actually lose track of time or clock time. I don't really lose track of time when I'm sleeping, even in bed with my husband. Like, I pretty much know about what time it is, sometimes to the minute, or half hour. And I mean, I can forget and leave something on the stove when I get distracted, especially as I age, but that's not the same as this. And I think, psychologists call this flow. It's you're so engaged with something, and maybe it's engaged with kairos rather than chronos. And so I have to set a timer if I'm sitting down to write and I've got somewhere to be, because that part of my brain might kick back on, but it might not. And one of the other things I think about when I think about creativity and time, or beauty and time, is the level of detail and precision that it takes to do something, either the way you envision it, if that's the kind of artist you are, or the way that feels good to you, if you're just feeling your way. It's an unknowable amount of time that it's going to take. Yeah. And my first experience of realizing this was, I had this dream of an image, and I wanted to try to recreate it in fabric from my sister's wedding canopy. It was of like a sun, like the rays of a sun being like arms reaching towards a moon, the face of the moon. And I sketched it really quickly with pastel, and then I tried to recreate it in fabric, and it wasn't working. And my boyfriend at the time was an artist, and he coached me and coached me and coached me and coached me to try to keep going instead of giving up and settling for something I wasn't happy with. And it took a lot, because it was so opposite of what I've imbibed in capitalism, of like, you just got to produce, you got to get on to the next thing. I was in graduate school at the time. I needed to do other stuff rather than this art project. And so I think he was giving me permission to take the time that it took to get it down to the level of detail. And I mean, graduate school was an example of that too. Like, I took 9 years to get my master's and PhD in sociology, and I knew I was taking the slower path, but I just refused. I didn't want to do it if it was going to mean giving up too many other things in life. And I wanted to explore what I was interested in rather than just do the most expedient, quickest thing. Like some people need to, right? Like, economically, I had enough ease to be able to take that time. And people do get really caught up in how long is, when are you going to finish your book, or when are you going to finish your dissertation? Right. And I actually developed this metaphor that I would use when people would ask me, how long do you think it's going to take to finish this dissertation? Where I would say, well, I can't answer that, and here's why. Imagine you're doing a jigsaw puzzle, but you don't have a box to look at the picture of, and nobody does. Yeah. And you don't actually have all the pieces. You have to keep going on scavenger hunts for the pieces. And some of the pieces you find don't belong in the puzzle. And it just kind of went on and on. I actually put this in my acknowledgments section or whatever, or some appendix, and then I eventually realized, oh, right, it's a creative process, which is different from recreating something that somebody else has already done.
Right. Oh, I think you've just helped me understand something I've been grappling with for a long time. I remember reading that the Mayan calendar says something about time as art, and then be in that spirit of time as creativity, and not everything is known to us. We don't have all the pieces ahead of time. That's the art of living, is finding the pieces that show us the picture, that we can't know it ahead of time. We're cheating ourselves out of that experience that you talked about, the permission to care about the feeling and about the discovery of finding the pieces as much of anything that will be revealed to you through that process.
Yeah, and you said some people think that the reason we have time is so that not everything happens at once.
Yeah.
What you just said, though, was making me think maybe we have time so that we can be creative. Because if we knew already how it was going to turn out, what would be it would be the jigsaw puzzle. It might be fun, like a jigsaw puzzle's fun. I love jigsaw puzzles.
Yeah.
I get totally addicted to jigsaw puzzles, don't get me wrong. But it's not the same as creating something new.
Yeah.
This is really helpful, Rebecca, because I feel like, to me, creativity and spirituality are so interlinked.
Yeah.
And like, it's a core part of my spirituality.
Yeah.
And so, like, maybe time is a gift from God, spirit, mystery, whatever, to us to be able to participate,
right,
in creation.
To me, they have a similar, what I would talk about it as kind of an energetic quality or an energetic signature. Spirituality, creativity, sexuality, these things have this life force that we cannot, we can try to force them to be something, but it always feels like something is lost when we're not in the spirit of revelation and responsiveness to, okay, this is what's being shown in this moment. In fact, before I found that quote about only reason for time is so that everything doesn't happen all at once, I had this idea, which was, I wonder whether time is less a measure of duration and more an indicator of what is available for us to experience. Like, and not rushing the experience of what is ours, not rushing to see for that canopy to be done, because there's something actually in the yearning and in the feeling of figuring it out that is what really makes this human experience beautiful. The keeping with it and the repetition and the illumination of something that, we could go a lot faster, but it would probably be something that we've already done just in a different form that would rob us of that. What you were talking about, that rob us of that real creative joy of experiencing it in our own time.
Mm-hmm. I love that. There's tons of speculative fiction about time, and much of it is about time travel, which I'm not as interested in, but there's some that's about what if we knew the future, and how would that affect us? Yeah. Like, there's this book called The Measure, where everyone, on one morning, everyone in the whole world wakes up with a little box outside their door or by their bed if they're sleeping on the street, by their head, and in the little box is a length of thread, and the length of the thread correlates with the length of their lifetime. And eventually people realize what's going on, and some of them get to choose whether or not to look at it. Right. And so it's just like totally how it changes the society and relationships. And
as far as I know, there's some genetic testing that's available that could help me to know if I was predisposed to early onset dementia like my mom had. Mm-hmm. And the little bit of counseling that I received about it was just decide if you want to know how long your thread is ahead of time, and would that actually improve your quality of life or not. And so far I've opted not. That part of the length of thread is also what's mine to learn. I like to think that some place in time I also was a co-conspirator in deciding how long that thread was going to be. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't feel like it's just happening it wasn't arbitrary, it wasn't just cut a bad piece of thread, but that there's something in there for me, in the figuring it out.
Yeah, also, you never know when, God forbid, you get hit by a bus or something. Right. So, my mother got hit by a car and died at age 66, and so even if you did the genetic testing, you still wouldn't know how long your thread was.
Right.
So, and everyone who knew my mom well knew that if she'd been given a choice between that and the long, slow demise from the Parkinson's that she had recently been diagnosed with, she probably would have picked the instant. Oh, wow. So maybe we did all pick. I don't know.
Oh, I love that. I feel like a gift in that. I like to think of it that way. That helps me to think of, rather than things are just happening to us, but the things that even in the moment, they don't make sense. That in the fullness of time, it's like there was some benevolence at play. helps me to wake up in the morning, to like tether myself to that.
The other another theme in my exploration of time has been about ritual and ceremony.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of sociology about the pace of life and how it's faster in some cultures than others. And then there's both sociology and like just popular journalism writing about how everything's going too fast. Actually, the problem right now isn't speed. We're beyond speed. Things are whizzing, like all different directions and not anchored.
Yeah.
And ritual is part of how time is anchored, social time is anchored. When we have shared times that we slow down and then shared times that we speed up and shared times that we celebrate. And I also have done some ancestral healing work using Daniel Foor's methodology, where you supposedly, I have part of my brain believes this, part of my brain doesn't, but can access really far back ancestors who have healed enough on their journey. Like, the idea is that we can continue to heal after we die, and that ancestral reverence practices that happen in many, many cultures help those who've passed on before us to continue their healing journey. And that if you go far enough back, you find ones who are healed. And sometimes you need to go so far back that it's before your particular lineage was ruptured by displacement from the land, displacement from tradition, but that those benevolent beings can become guides if we are in relationship to them. And so that's part of when I do that move of like relaxing back a little bit, it's into the trust of those beings, that they care, that they're participating in trying to heal the whole lineage between me and them. And that the rituals around, specifically rituals around revering ancestors are important, but also just practicing rituals that have been handed down through the generations, even if it's hard to discern what their meaning is now. If their meaning now becomes, I am doing this because my ancestors did it, as a nod to them, it can help me with the feeling caught up in time anxiety and urgency. Like Sabbath, I grew up with the practice of Sabbath in the Jewish tradition, and we didn't work and we didn't drive our cars, and I'm not that strict about it now, but having some way to honor that sense of sacred time out of time.
I really love that. That you touching on this piece that at the very beginning I mentioned. Part of what brought me into this conversation was my curiosity about even how our relationships work with ancestors backwards and forwards in time, and how they support our healing and we support theirs. Because so much of the focus as of late, this scientific research is a lot about around epigenetics and also trauma that's passed forward, which is rich and so important. And I'm also curious about the healing that happens backwards and forwards in time. When I think about why even this podcast, the name, where that came from, Liberating Beauty, it was the idea of the liberating quality of beauty to bring us into the awareness of of the miracle in every moment. And in a sense, I feel as you're talking about time, why I've always felt a kind of a benevolence of time, because the time itself doesn't have an opinion about things. Like it's benevolent, and it has that kind of what we've talked about a little bit today, the joy in our experience of learning. And I want to know what that feels like in this case, what it feels like to you in the most embodied sense. What does that feel like to you when that loosening happens? Maybe it's when you're writing, maybe it's when it comes to you in a dream, that it's more resonant. I was going to say come into contact, but it's more that resonance, the attunement, what that feels like for you.
Well, I don't know if I know yet, really, but there's been a few times when I've had this feeling of when I've been able to relax back, and it's not like I'm relaxing back into stasis. I'm relaxing back into a flow. And it's the image is a little bit like plants that are rooted, but they're also flowing in a stream. Like and so what I'm open, and I'm trying, and there's an energetic sense of opening to that flow animating me. So, it's so trite to say like go with the flow, but like and there's this movement artist leader that's related to the emergence work. I think her name is Ariana.
Oh yeah, with Presencing Institute.
Yeah. I did just like a tiny little dip into her work, but what I got from it was this, like sensing into the energy that wants to, this is a podcast so you can't see the movement I'm making, but that wants to, instead of trying to decide how to move and then moving, allowing. And so I feel like time is that same, like the relationship to time that feels healing is to trust or allow that unfolding in that energetic way.
For anyone who's interested in reading more about this is social presencing theater that you're talking about, and the allowing the naturalness of time to meet us, for us to for that encounter. Because I wondered why this phrase "nature of time," and maybe it's not even nature; it's the naturalness of time that's there, that flows through us, and what it feels like when we are kind of in that river.
Yeah, I did have a dream once early on when I was starting to work on this book, also where I was like at a newsstand and I was looking at the magazines Time and Life right next to each other, and it was like time, life. Oh, and I woke up and I was like, oh, time is life and life is time.
And we've taken out the naturalness of that connection by making it also a commodity versus something that is of us and we are of it.
Yeah, I think that was part of what was motivating the poem, about each drop of time lands as it will, ripples in this pool of life. This pool meaning like this little pool that is this being.
Yeah.
And so there's a unity there, right? There's the drop, there's the pool, there's the ocean that of all. And rather than my time as a resource that I can allocate, it being a beingness.
When people talk about time being such a pure form of love, also when you're able to share your time, and that quality of time and presence, that makes sense to me in a new way from what you're saying. Yeah, I'm not allocating it. I'm being with it. I'm being with you in relationship with time and with love and attention. I love that. It's funny, this about the drops, the poem you just wrote. I found something that I had this practice for a while of trying to listen to my dad. He's also passed away. Not like channeling, I don't know. I don't even exactly know what that would mean or not mean, but just trying, if anything, giving myself permission to write from stream of consciousness, and it felt easier to do that when I was listening to him. So these are not his words. So obviously there's something that he and I were doing together in this experience, and he said something like, this is what he said. He said, "Beck, when I think of being aware, I think of 100 things showing themselves softly to you, but just a little bit at a time. You couldn't handle it if you received everything all at once, and why would you need to? Isn't it glorious to feel the soft hand of someone you love brush your shoulder? Isn't it sublime to hear a song you remember singing when you were young? Isn't it everything to have the taste of something sweet grace your tongue? This is awareness, staying with the tiny delights. Follow them slowly, or maybe just follow them naturally, and you will find that more and more delights arouse your senses, because this is what the universe desires for you, a life of tiny pleasures, a little at a time."
I feel like there's so much more we could say.
We're just getting started.
Should I share one thing that...
Please.
Well, it was when you corrected your thing from slowly to naturally. I do think that, like I said before, slow is important as an antidote to this culture. And I've been studying with this Tibetan Buddhist teacher named Tsogni Rinpoche, and he talks about the Tibetans have this concept of the sort of vital energy, prana, they call it lung, and that it in Western culture is sped up, and by up it actually means like up in our heads rather than down in the hara or the groundedness. And so he has very specific like breathing exercises to bring the lung down. And so although I don't think we need to only slow down or always slow down, I do think we need to learn and practice it.
I love that. Also, bringing the energy also down in a really fully embodied way. I remember someone said to me, I don't know, a number of years ago, that I have PhD-itis. And I wonder if that's just the accumulation of a lot of energy. And there's nothing wrong with that, but that it's could be distributed so I could live in more fully from all of me in an integrated way. That really resonates. I love that. Yeah. This is great, Becca. I think there are a lot of people who really need to hear this right now for so many reasons. One, about the permission, but also the joy of reclaiming this idea that when we are able to feel our way into, whether it's the writing of a book or some kind of creative practice, like that is also part of our work, part of our learning to be as humans and figuring out our life in time. We're not late to that party. That's the beauty. I heard this artist the other day say, wow, I think this was John Baptiste. He said that something about the inevitability of art when we just allow ourselves to open to it. It's just inevitable that it will reveal to us something beautiful, something that is meaningful, even if it's just to us for our own learning, and that's enough. So to not rush ourselves through that essential part of being alive and being human. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Becca, if people are interested in learning more about the novel you're writing or being in touch with you, is there a place where they can connect with you?
Yeah, my website is RebeccaSKrantz.com.
Perfect. I'll put that also in the show notes. All right, Becca, thanks again for being here, and I know we will not be our last time talking about time.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Take care. Thank you for listening to the Liberating Beauty Podcast. To learn more about the podcast, my work, and how I can support you on your journey of spiritual becoming, head over to the Together in Beauty website or email me at rebecca@togetherInBeauty.com. It's an honor to accompany you on the journey. A huge thank you to our multi-talented producer and co-creative director, Mapumba Cilombo. To learn more about Mapumba's work as a producer, sound engineer, and musician, check out the show notes for a link to his website at mapumbamusic.com. And as always, many thanks to you, our listeners. None of this would be possible without the energy, encouragement, and vitality that you reflect back to us each week. Until next time, may you walk in beauty.